how cities are going to be looking to the change in policing, and that's an interesting thing because it definitely shows the signs of change in our times. Because I definitely,
for sure.
because a lot of these, sorry Jay, all of these issues have been brought to light. Yeah, they've been brought to light like as early as like 2012, 2015. That's when around the same time, like that's when Black Lives Matter like started up around the Obama administration, where all of these were being brought up, and it's crazy how now things are actually like starting to change and whatnot. Because all of this defund the police stuff, they've been saying that since 2015, but people have been listening. So
Right. And I mean, even before that, the Rodney King thing that happened back in the 90s, that started questioning how we look at, police departments right off. And that changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
And in terms of how we evaluate, how police, that, the police brutality, was generally acknowledged as something that, okay, definitely that's a real thing. It used to be that people would just kind of like talk about it under the table, or we just accept it as part of like the norm. But that's when people started pushing back. It's taken this long. What's that? 90? What was it? 92.
92. Yeah.
It's taken this long to now say, hey, we really need to evaluate. What a police department does and it's about. I don't believe in defunding a police department. I think it has a purpose. But evaluating its role and some of the things that it does, I mean, does it really need to be there? When you have, a like for example, you see a mental health situation, and who you call 911, and right now, what happens is the police come with a orange shotgun with rubber bullet, to put that person down. That's what happens in San Francisco.
Is that really what
so that they could arrest them and bring them to the hospital? They're not. I don't think they booked them, but
is that really what happens?
Yeah, that's what happens.
Really, and that's that's part of the policy that they do.
Right, because when you call 911, who are they going to call? They're not going to call the ambulance. They're not going to call the paramedics because they have no capacity to bring a person to. I mean, maybe an ambulance does, but they know that they don't have the capacity to deal with that. Maybe a person's aggression, and so then they call the police. So then they come and they have the capacity to deal with that, and they will put you in cuffs and then put you away and then bring you to the hospital. That's what they'll do. And you could go gently, or you can go in a non-compliant manner. Right. And that's how they've dealt with it now. Now, I don't know now because I know that, for example, SFPD, they've changed their policy towards it. But right now, I don't know what's in place, but I don't think there's anything in place. Eventually, what'll happen is that there will be a team of like people who, mental health assessment people who are trained, who could de-escalate a situation and then bring someone in. I don't know what enforcement powers they will have, if at all. I don't know even if it'll work, or will they still need to be able to call police if worse comes to worse. But that's how we deal with mental health issue now in most places in the United States. We call the police to go and do it, and which seems like that seems kind of maybe that might not be the best solution in some places. Now, I could see that if police officers are depthly trained in these things, they could do that job pretty well. And I've seen the police be quite compassionate towards people with mental illness, and it seems like their training was pretty good. But what if it's a situation where maybe that individual who was assigned to that that case is not? Then
that's the thing.
Becomes kind of dicey.
Wasn't there a story? I don't know if it was recent or what, but some guy was like waving around a bat in Walmart. You guys hear about that? Waving around the bat, threatening people. Cops were called, and eventually he was just shot in the chest. I saw a short video of it. I didn't really I don't think I saw the whole story, but yeah, he was just in the area waving around the bat. It seemed like, I think it was obvious he had some mental health issues. Maybe it wasn't, but it looked like they tased him first, and then I didn't see the actual shot, but then they said that they shot him. Like, yeah, they shot him in the chest and then passed away. So, yeah, so that's interesting hearing that the policy and standard should really be going in with a shotgun with rubber bullets, but then I guess maybe they didn't know the situation, they didn't know it was a mental health thing, or like you said, they weren't well equipped to handle somebody with mental health issues, something like that.
Well, I think
I'm not
that's
really
what they
sure.
do. Is what their goal is to quickly try to de-escalate the situation. They
Right,
do bring it
exactly.
as a just in case, as a deterrent.
Right.
And if they need to take a person in, generally you have to take a person in for some sort of mental health assessment, but usually it's with handcuff.
Yes, for sure.
And it's done for their safety. But I think that we're now in a place where we have to kind of like evaluate, is this a way to deal with it? And especially if you're dealing with a population that looks on police officers in a very negative way and have negative experience with police officer, then with police departments, then that could be quite that could put another layer on top of it. And so when I saw it, it was a situation where people didn't have like a negative view of police. So when they did come in, the police officers were quite gentle in that situation, and they responded in kind. That person was a little bit pushing back, but eventually they were able to convince that person that they needed to go and get an assessment. But they did have to arrest her. They had to, well, I don't know if they arrested her, but they put her in handcuffs and they had to take her away. So
the things, a lot of the calls that are coming in, the most challenging thing for cops is that they have to identify if that person has mental illness. They don't know, and sometimes the people calling don't know if that person has mental illness. So like, I don't know what the training is like to even identify. Definitely, social workers have better skill on that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they have to add like a whole component as part of the police department, either more training.
Well, I think
identification.
The whole idea of defunding a police department isn't to eliminate a police department, but is to put some of those services,
some of the money
some of that money into a service that would address some of that within a population.
I think that's what Oakland is trying to do, right?
That's what Oakland's trying to do.
That's what Minneapolis is trying to do. Actually, no, sorry. Minneapolis is trying to implement something else, and I do agree with the whole defund the police is meant to allocate funds. I'm definitely for that, but there are some people that definitely do believe that there should even be police. And I remember having conversations with people where there's a lot of they're in the very beginnings of the riots and whatnot. There's a lot of like sentiment of abolish the police and whatnot. And like I do believe that the police funding need to be reallocated to different fields in order to address the issues that are being propped up with the times and whatnot. But I'm not going to ignore the fact that there are people that say that there shouldn't be police. And to me, in my opinion, like I don't think I can agree to any of that.
Well, that's the thing. I was actually going to get you guys to clarify what defund the police means, because I'm not completely up to date with it. But yeah, just because exactly that's what it sounds. It sounds like people want to shut down like precincts or something, which does not make sense to me. But
sometimes I wonder about all these freaking movements. Can't they just pick a name that's very descriptive in the right way?
Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
That's
what if Black Lives Matter was called like Black Lives Matter as well as you? What if what if they changed the name and made it more descriptive, right? Like, or like defund the police, or what would be a different name they could use that would be more descriptive for people? Because when you just hear defund the police, you automatically, most people would be like, hell no, don't defund the police. But really, defund the police is about reallocating services or money so that it's a little bit more evenly spread.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
And that totally makes sense.
Yeah, well, a lot of the police departments have become militarized. Like in a lot of, there have been tons of examples. Like I've seen this way back in 2015, where there's examples where a lot of small town police departments have like militarized weapons. They have a lot of vehicles that aren't being used by the military, and then they go down to the police departments. They buy them out because they're discounted and whatever, because the military's not using them anymore. And so what they do is they sell it, and then all these like small town police departments buy it. And the sentiment at that time, and it goes on to today, where it's like we don't need these militarized police departments where there's no terrorists here and whatnot. And that's the reason why they wanted to defund the police. That's why they want to remove out like the funds for those departments where they have tanks and whatnot. Like you see this all the time on Twitter. It's like, yeah, why do these police have tanks? Like you see those videos where tanks are rolling in like suburban neighborhoods where really they shouldn't be there, right? They shouldn't really be there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, growing up in the 80s, I remember there were quite a few like these school shooting situations, and 80s and 90s. You see like people walking around with the automatic weapons, body armor, and they were hard to take down. I mean, there was multiple of these.
Oh, there was a huge one. Was that in LA?
Yeah, there's something in LA and
the 90s.
Right. And
oh my god, these two guys were fully kitted with body armor head to toe.
Right. And man. I remember the story goes that the LAPD or whatever the local police department had, they didn't have anything. They had the armored car.
Denzel Washington was in a movie that was based on that event.
Oh, okay.
Really?
I think it was in the 70s or something like that. Or because when it was a bank robber, was it not? And
no, there were a lot of bank robberies in the 70s. The 70s were full of like armed bank robberies.
Right. And at that time,
I remember that
cops were only issued like the
revolvers.
Exactly. And then ever since then, they're like, no, we need to arm the police. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And so a lot of that.
This body armor one happened in the early 90s, I think.
Early 90s, yeah, I think it was early 90s.
Yeah.
And the police were definitely outgunned by two dudes. And
two dudes in full
body armor, hard to kill. And there were incidents in San Francisco where there was a gunman who was fully loaded, went up to this building on California Street and just wrecked, just hurt a lot of people. And out of all of that came out a lot of like arm the police kind of like initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
And that it grew out of all of that. It was a response to those kind of actions. Where you had like local terrorists, in addition to remember Oklahoma City when they when the federal building was bombed out there. That's local terrorism, and you didn't have to go that far. I mean, there was a local terrorist doing stuff like that, and so these kind of like things that happened in the 90s, really in 80s and 90s, they affected how police departments started evolving into paramilitary kind of that with all this tactical kind of stuff out there. But I mean, these things don't come out of nowhere just because people are fantasizing over having big guns and stuff like that. It does come out of like almost a necessity. But there also
they just go a little bit overboard on some of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With the tanks and everything, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, those are complex issues, and I think that each community will have to have these kind of conversations about what kind of police force that they want to have. I don't think that you could go around completely defunding one or having some bunch of community policing in a way that where you completely eliminate that. But I mean, there is such thing as community policing, and it has a lot to do with just building relationships within the community, and spending that time investing in those kind of relationships.